Hey there, it's Puff, and today I want to show you something new that we've been working on called DreamFlow. DreamFlow is an online IDE where you can build Flutter apps. And you can do that through like classic traditional code, but you can also do it through visual builders and through AI. Now I've seen a lot of people focusing on the AI bits, so I'm going to be focusing mostly on the code because I'm a traditional coder. So to get started, we're going to go to dreamflow.app or dreamflow.com. It would redirect if we do that. And we're going to start a new project. We actually need to log in first. We can do this. So we can start with a prompt, which is what you would do if you want the AI to generate something for you. I'm going to start with a new project, which is an empty project, just like any other Flutter app. So we start with a counter project. I create something called NanoChat, and I typically, it's 1:19 p.m. So I do a lot of these, so I timestamp them like this. We're going to create a project and then tell you a bit about what's going on. So DreamFlow splits the work between your local browser and a server-side component, and it's setting up the server-side component now. So in the browser we can play a game of asteroids if we want, but here you can see actually what's happening on the server. So you can see that it's getting the packages, it's checking for versions, and now it's telling me that I can run like update for those packages, but it's now actually launching your lib main.dart in a web server. Pretty similar to what you would do when you locally run it into Chrome. Here we run the web server version because we want to redirect the output from the server to the browser, of course. So this takes about a minute, and then you get your normal preview that you would get from any local Flutter 2. So it's starting an entire browser here. You can see that we're now getting a preview. The preview is starting, it takes a moment, and then we'll see our traditional Flutter counter app, as you would see it normally. Zoom in a bit, we have a bit more space, right? And we can add this. Now, like I said, I'm a coder, so I'm going to do a split view between the preview and the code. So here's the code that you know for any Flutter app. There's one extra package in here, but for the rest of this looks like the standard counter app. So we can look at the files that we have here, right? And then you can see that we have one more file, the theme.dart, and you have the postpack.yaml, everything is there that you expect. And it's a Flutter app, right? So that also means that nowadays on a browser, if we make a change, we get stateful hot reload. So I said that I was going to build an app called NanoChat. So let's hit save there, and then you'll see that it updates instantly and it remembers the 3 because we have stateful hot reload on the browser now. It's really cool about it. For the rest of it, right, it has a main, it's everything you expect from a Flutter app. So let's start working on the chat app. Now, I'm going to start with just storing the messages locally. Let's move myself to the top right for now. Like, I'm probably least in the way there. Okay, so we need to first think of like, what's the state of a chat app? The state of a chat app is a list of messages. So let's add that here, right? It's a list of messages. And let's give some messages here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then we need to show those messages. And we're going to do that in the column here, right? This is a column of widgets. And at the top of that column, we're going to add a list of the messages, which we do by using the list view builder constructor that we have here. And it needs 2 things. It needs an item count, which is like the number of items it shows, which we set to messages.length. Let me actually fix the typo in messages there, because otherwise I'm going to like be annoyed all the time, like that. And then it needs an item builder. Like this, the item builder gets 2 things: the context that we don't use and the index of the message that it wants to display. For that, we return a text widget with, let's see, messages index. That's about it. So now we're going to hit save. You see that we hit the first error. And this error is actually fully expected, because you cannot show a list view without having it in some container that knows its space. So, right, normally in Flutter, I would actually type expanded and then child here, right? And make the closing thing, and that would work. But in DreamFlow, we can also do this differently. In DreamFlow, we can actually do this visually. If we click here, we see that we get the widget tree on the left. You can see that here we have our column with the list view and the text in there. And if we now right click here, we can say wrap this widget in an expanded. You can see that it manipulated the code here. And now if we save this, and I'm definitely not in the right spot here, like this, and do a restart, excuse me, it shows me the chat messages here. That looks really good. I actually don't like that we now have these at the bottom, so we're going to get rid of these. Let's delete these widgets. And let's also delete the floating action button, because we're going to use a different input mechanism. I also don't fully like how these are really close to each other. So instead of just doing this text here, I'm going to do a list style with the title to be that text. like this. And when we save, we get a bit more space here, see? So you could see how I'm just going between doing things in the widget tree and working in the code here, right? It just updates everything. We can also inspect these widgets and then select them. And then we can check the properties of the selected widgets. It's a bit smaller. I'm gonna let's hide the widget tree for now. So I can select one of these. So here's the text. I can say, hey, you know what? Let's make all text centered now. You see that the messages are now centered. You can see here on line 59 that it added the property. So if we select this one again and make it left aligned, see, it's changing property for us. Now I prefer for it to stay left aligned, so let's do it like this. But you can use these two ways to manipulate the code. Okay, let's get rid of this line, we don't need it. And now at the bottom of my list, I want to add a text field. The text field is where I can enter new messages. So for that, I need an onSubmitted handler, which is what gets called when we hit enter on the message, for example, and then we get the text that was sent here. And we want to add that to messages add our text. Now we need to, of course, repaint the Flutter UI. So we do that by calling setState here and then like this. Let's indent this and there we are. So we can save this and now we have, let's switch out of inspect mode. We have this line here at the bottom, which is the text input, and we say new message, we hit enter and it adds to the list. Very simple chat app that runs everything locally, right? Okay, we can get rid of some of the code that we don't need anymore. The increment counter is not used, and then actually counter itself also not. It could be a const, but honestly, we'll leave it as it is for now. Okay, now we need to store these messages somewhere. And for that, I'm going to use Firebase. So firebase.google.com is where we're going to go. And I'm going to click through to the Firebase console. Projects. I'm going to use a project that I've already created called NanoChat, and I quickly just want to show you what we're going to store the data in. I'm going to use two products here. I'm going to use the Firestore database and Authentication. Not a lot that we need to know about Authentication, but in this Firestore database, I have a few collections, and we're going to be using the collection called Chat, which you see has message and timestamp in each of these documents. Let's actually order this one on timestamp. Let's do that descending like this, so that we see the newest at the top. So this was the newest message. There's one here with a fake timestamp that I manually entered that has a bit of a longer message that we see at the top in a bit. Okay, so this is what we're going to be using in our chat app. So we switch back to DreamFlow, and we're now going to add Firebase to this. So we're going to add a dependency on Firebase. Now there's a button to add a Firebase dependency here, but I don't really like how this works. It creates a new Firebase project. So I'm actually not going to use that button. I could also add Firebase by going to pub.dev and finding the correct versions of the packages that I want to use. I'm also not going to do that. I'm actually going to use the AI agent for this. So we get a new panel here on the right where I can tell the AI what to do. And in this case, I want it to do something very concrete. I want it to add dependencies on Firebase Core, Firebase Auth, and Cloud Firestore. So these are three packages that you can find on pub.dev. And I wanted to add these dependencies for me. I wanted to do nothing else. Sometimes the agent goes a bit wild on me. It's like nothing else is needed here. Firebase Core, Firebase Auth, and Cloud Firestore. So we hit enter, and it sends it off to the server where the LLM evaluates what it wants us to do. And it's actually now going to tell, it's like, look, I'm going to add them to the pub spec. Here's the dependencies that I find. And this one sometimes differs a bit. Now it says the specific versions that it's going to use. And it tells me actually what it's doing to my pub textual channel. So we can check the change here. This is what it's going to do. And it's now doing the final steps from the looks of it to add that data. So we'll wait until it says that it's fully complete, and then we're going to check. Okay, now it's really complete. Let's see our code. It is a bit much. You know what? I'm going to hide the AI agent quickly and open this one up so that we can see the pub spec. And here you see the new dependencies, which is exactly what we wanted. So let's switch back to main.dart and hide the tree again so that we have a bit more space. So we added a Firebase dependency now. Now we're going to use it. So we're going to tell the Flutter app where it gets, where it can find the Firebase project that it needs to connect to. We're going to do that in the main function here at the start. We're going to make that async, and we're going to add a snippet. So I have a code snippet here. There's many ways to do this. I've been using this one for so long that I just have a snippet for it, which is this. You can see that I have API keys in here, and if you've never done Firebase, you might be shocked that I show you my API key. But actually, there's no security risk for me. The database that we're connecting to is fully protected on the server already. So I've connected it in a different way, which is why you can use these API keys. That's how it normally works in Firebase projects. Okay, we get an error here, which means that we still need to import something. So this is about it. Now I happen to know that since we added Firebase without restarting anything, that this won't work yet. So I'm going to restart the preview by clicking this button here. So this is now restarting, and well, we'll wait for it to complete, but we didn't do a lot yet. So we're also going to continue in the code here. So I'm going to call the second Firebase, or the first Firebase module here, which is Firebase auth. We get an error here because we didn't import that yet. So let's add the import. And then we're going to sign in anonymously. Oh, focus issue there. So, signing in anonymously means that you sign in, but you don't have to enter any credentials. So you essentially just get a user ID. Okay, I'm going to await that because it's asynchronously, and then we're going to save that. Now, it doesn't do anything yet. It did a refresh, but we're not showing anything in the UI yet. So I'm going to go back to the bottom here, and just above the list of messages, I'm going to add a text field where I show the user ID. We don't know anything about the user but the user ID, so we're going to say user ID, well, especially if we put it in the quotes like this. And then we're going to show the user ID, which we do by getting Firebase auth dot instance, dot current user. And you know, the current user must exist, I'm pretty sure of that. So I'll do a bang here and then like this. We're going to hit save. Apparently the Firebase user does not use yet, probably because that code didn't run yet. Let's see if we do a hot restart here. Now it does work. That was my bad. Okay, so you can see that we have a user ID here. I find this a bit like it's getting a bit cramped. So I'm actually going to go to inspect mode and select this for a bit. And let me show the properties here. I want to make this text, let's see. Let's add some styling to it. So we add a text style, and I first want to make it so that the user ID is underlined. And I also want to give the font a bit of weight. So let's make it bold. It's not ideal yet, but it's a bit more like present here. Okay. And of course you see that it changed the code for us here. Okay, so we added Firebase. We are now signed in. So let's actually start showing the messages from the database. And to do that, we're going to use a new widget. We're going to use a stream builder. So we get a stream of data from Firestore, which contains either the current messages, but it also listens to updates for those messages. And a stream builder needs two properties here. It needs a stream, which is the data that we're going to show, which we're going to get from Firebase Firestore. And of course, we don't have that yet. So we need to import that library. Then .instance, and then we have the collection. Remember that collection was called chat. Now in that chat collection, we want to order by, and remember what I did in the UI there in the console, I sorted it by timestamp, descending timestamp. I'm doing the same in my code here so that we get the latest messages only, like this. Then we want to just get a few of the messages because there's quite a few messages in my database by now. And then we get the snapshots, which is like gets us the stream that we need. Okay. Does it make sense, right? We go to the chat collection, we order it by descending timestamp, and then we get the latest 5 chat messages. Okay, now we need to display them. For that, we need a builder. The builder gets a context again, which we don't use, but it also gets a snapshot, called a async data snapshot in Flutter. There's a few things that can be the case here. The snapshot could have an error, and if it has an error, then we want to display that error because like we need to typically fix those errors. So we're gonna like return that error in a text error, and then let's see, snapshot.error, like this. Okay, if there's no error, then we hope that the snapshot has data, but if it doesn't have any data yet, then we're going to return a circular loading indicator, a spinner, right, like that. Okay, now if neither of these is true, we have data. So let's get the data from the snapshot, which is not the data. Since we checked whether it exists, we can do an exclamation mark here. And then we get the documents from the snapshot. Now the documents is what we saw in the Firebase console, right, with one document for each snapshot, for each document. So we do that in data.docs, like this. Now we need to display these documents. And for that we need pretty much the same code that we have here. So I'm gonna like go down here and select all of this, and then we're gonna move it up here. Change the comma to a semicolon and return. And instead of getting the hard-coded messages, we're now gonna get the docs.length. And instead of like messages index, we're going to get it from docs, and we get the field from that called message. Okay, let's save this and see if it works. You see that? We now get everything from the database. Like this was the message that we saw at the top, but like I said, a bit of the message of the day, right? And it's hello, hello, hello. Let's quickly also send message to the database in that case. So we get rid of this set state here, and we send it to Firebase Firestore. In fact, we send it to the exact same thing as we have here. So let me just copy paste that here. Oh, forgot one character. And then we do add, and we need a set of fields here that we need to pass in. Oh. The first thing we want to send in is the field called message, and that's the message that the user typed. The next one that we want to send in is the timestamp. Now, I'm going to use the local timestamp because that's what my database expects. That's how it's set up. And it needs to be in milliseconds since the epoch. And the last thing we're going to send in is the user ID of the user sending this message. And if you send this in, that means that you can also delete the message. Not something I'm going to build today, but that's why we're passing the user ID, which is Firebase auth.currentuser .instance.current user, and then .user ID, and now it will always have a value, so like this. Okay, that means that if we now disable inspect mode again so that we can type something and say hello world, and we hit enter, that message shows at the top, right? Or hello developers, right? Or even better, right? Flutter developers, that all works. We have a full chat app, it goes to the database. Remember that I told you that I'm not worried about abuse to my database because I've got it secure. Let's, for example, say that somebody types like a really mean message here, really mean message, and hits enter. I'm going to hit enter and check what happens in the messages here at the top. Did you see that the message briefly showed up and then it disappeared again? See? So what happens here is that when I hit enter, the Flutter app straight away locally shows the message, and then it sends it off to the database, to Firestore on the server. And on the server, I have security rules, which is a built-in language from Firestore that says what is allowed. And clearly, really mean message is not allowed, so it rejects it. So the Flutter app hears that the message is rejected and it updates the UI. So when I type the mean message, I see that mean message, but nobody else ever sees it. That's really important about it. So that's why I wasn't too worried about showing you my API key. Okay, so Flutter world, maybe? Yeah, that is allowed. Like there's a list of messages, words that's allowed. So this is sort of how you can work across what we call 3 surfaces, right? I can type code, I can do the visual designer, right, with the widget tree and the property inspector, and I can use the AI agents to quickly build out a chat app. So if you like doing this, go to dreamflow.app today or check it out, and I'd love to hear what you are working on with that. Thank you.